This is lesson 251 in Other Civilizations that are connected to Mesopotamia and Egypt. This is a lesson about four civilizations that came basically after our four river valley civilizations. They also had many contributions to make to our society today. Now here's a map that shows both Egypt and Mesopotamia. You can see Egypt down here in green on the lower left, and there's the Nile River. You can also look about the upper middle, and you can see Babylonia, and this is Mesopotamia. You can see the Euphrates River, and then you can also see the Tigris River. And between Mesopotamia and Egypt, there were many societies that arose later. Along the Mediterranean coast, you can see here the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, the eastern end of it, and along these trade routes between Egypt and Mesopotamia. And you can see all of these trade routes. These are routes that can take caravans and traders and travelers and even armies along it between Egypt and Mesopotamia. So many of these peoples made significant contributions to world history. Let's begin with the Hittites. The Hittites arose much later than Egypt or Mesopotamia. They thrived from between 1600 BC to about 1178 BC. They competed with Egypt for this middle ground between the two of them, along this eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea, where all these trade routes were. In the Bible, Abraham did lots of business with the Hittites, and the Hittites are also famous for ushering in the Iron Age. Keep in mind that iron is a vast improvement upon bronze, but in order to use iron, which is harder than bronze, sharper than bronze, you need to have the technology to really heat that metal up in order to be able to shape it the way you want it to. Then you had the Israelites. The Israelites also arose much later than Egypt or Mesopotamia. They came on the scene about 1250 BCE, and Abraham, once again, is said to have originally come from Mesopotamia. He and his descendants had lots of dealings with Egypt as well as with the Hittites. The Israelites brought us monotheism. And monotheism is a religion in which there is just one God. This God is the absolute creator and ruler of all the universe. And this God has complete moral authority. That's very different from the gods that these polytheistic religions believed in. The gods, as we have seen, of these polytheistic religions that they had, like, for example, in Mesopotamia, they had no moral code. They had no moral authority. They were more like humans. In fact, oftentimes they had more hang-ups than humans did. And as we saw, they can be moody, they can be unpredictable, just like people. This one God that the theistic Israel believed in was not like that. This God came from a position of moral authority. In the book of Genesis in the Bible, the author of that book begins by systematically destroying the various gods of polytheism. In the Bible, the Ten Commandments, which was given to the Israelites, also influenced tons of later law codes. The Phoenicians. The Phoenicians also arose later. They came on the scene about 1500 BCE to about 500 BCE, and you can see where the Phoenicians are coming from, along this eastern edge of the Mediterranean in this orange area right here. And you can also see the trade routes that they established and the colonies that they established throughout the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians were known to be fantastic sea traders. Phoenicia was a culture and it was a language, but there was never a unified Phoenician government. There were independent city-states, and we've talked about city-states with regard to Mesopotamia. The Israelites deal with a lot of Phoenicians in the Bible, but never as Phoenicians. Instead, the Israelites call them by the various cities that they had. For example, they might talk about the people of Tyre or the people of Sidon, because these cities right here, they're all independent nations, even though they're all Phoenicians. The Phoenicians, like I said, were amazing sea traders. They went all over the Mediterranean and beyond. They established trading cities wherever they went, just like the map shows. But the biggest contribution of the Phoenicians was the phonetic alphabet. And hopefully I can explain that. In pictograph writing, like hieroglyphics and cuneiform, and the characters, especially the characters in Chinese writing, the symbols represent concepts and ideas, and that can come out to thousands of different symbols. But in the phonetic alphabet, the symbols represent sounds that the human mouth makes, and that is far fewer symbols. And so to make words and make ideas and syntax, you simply string these symbols together to form words in imitation of what these words sound like. That makes a huge difference because suddenly you only have to memorize a few symbols. For example, the number of symbols that we have for our entire English language is 26 symbols to represent human sounds. And the Phoenicians had 22. That is a far cry from having to memorize thousands of different characters. The Assyrians, they were on the rise from about 911 BC to 605 BC. Remember, this is still BC, so as we're going forward in time, we're counting downward in terms of numbers towards zero. The Assyrians were one of the most aggressive empires in all of history. The Assyrians were notorious for flaying their captives alive. In other words, skinning their captives. Where do you think Game of Thrones got the idea for the House of Bolton? The Assyrians were known for their powerful and innovative siege engines. And you can see a couple of siege engines right here. These were engines that were designed to knock down walls and crash through gates. The capital of the Assyrian Empire was the great city of Nineveh, and you can see an artist's rendering of it here. In the Bible, Nineveh was that city that Jonah, who was swallowed by a whale, didn't want to go and preach to. Jonah was an Israelite from the northern kingdom of Israel. He hated the Assyrians, but he had to go, otherwise another whale might eat him. So here's a picture at the bottom right of Jonah wandering around the city, getting ready to preach to it. Jonah is a monotheist. He believes in one God. He's an Israelite. And he's observing Assyrian polytheism in Nineveh. What you see here is you see some kind of a craftsman, and he's making little gods for people to buy and take home and put in some kind of a shrine or in a nice place, show to their friends, show to their family, and pray to. And Jonah, you can see as a monotheist, he's looking at this process with great disgust. Jonah was hoping that the people of Nineveh would not listen to him, but they did. You can see him at the top of this staircase preaching to people. When he was done preaching, he went out to a hill to watch God destroy the city, but God didn't, and Jonah got very, very angry. So there's a picture right here of Jonah sitting on a hill, looking down at the city, waiting for the fireworks to start. Later in 722 BC, the Assyrians utterly destroyed the kingdom of northern Israel. And North Israel was where Jonah was actually from. So it seems like Jonah was on to something when he didn't want to go and preach to the Assyrians. And here's a picture of the Assyrians attacking the North Israel capital city of Samaria with their siege engines and crashing through that gate right there. The Assyrians also came very, very close to destroying the southern Jewish kingdom of Judah. The Assyrians here are shown attacking the Judean town of Lachish in 701 BCE. To their credit, the Assyrians also gave us the first library. The famous library of Ashurbanipal in the royal palace at Nineveh is shown here. Nobody, even the Assyrians, are all bad. Because of their cruelty And because of their civil wars, an army of allied peoples led by the NeoBabylonians, a new group of Babylonians, centuries after the old one, destroyed Nineveh in 612 BCE, and the Assyrians soon fell completely after that.